If you've been dreaming about writing your novel, then this is your sign. My Notes to Novel course is officially open for enrollment, but only until August 28th. Notes to Novel is an 8-week live coaching program where I'll walk you through my proven step-by-step system to write a novel that agents request and readers devour. You'll get 8 weeks of live Q&A calls with me, personal feedback on your story's foundational elements, and accountability to keep you on track. Doors close soon, so don't wait. Head to savannahgilbo.com/yes to join us before August 28th. One more time, that's savannahgilbo.com/yes. I know you've got a story inside of you, so let me help you bring it to life. I hope to see you inside the course.
I'd read plenty of craft books and I'd listened to a few podcasts, but I still felt like something wasn't quite clicking for me. And this led to kind of a continuous cycle of fear and doubt, which just gave me this compulsion for more line editing. And I knew it at the time, but I couldn't break out of it.
Welcome to the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast. My name is Savannah Gilbo, and I'm here to help you write a story that works. I want to prove to you that writing a novel doesn't have to be overwhelming. So each week, I'll bring you a brand new episode with simple, actionable, and step-by-step strategies that you can implement in your writing right away. So whether you're brand new to writing or more of a seasoned author looking to improve your craft, this podcast is for you. So pick up a pen and let's get started.
In today's episode, I'm sharing real stories from writers who've gone through my Notes to Novel course. These are writers who were stuck in different ways but found their individual breakthrough moments. You're going to hear from fantasy writers who couldn't get past chapter 3, perfectionists who were trapped in endless editing loops, and writers who were overwhelmed by the sheer scope of writing a novel. Now, what I love most about these stories is that each writer faced a different challenge, but they all discovered the solution wasn't about working harder or being more talented. It was about having the right framework and tools to bring their story to life. So whether you're constantly rewriting your first chapter, drowning in perfectionism, or feeling frozen because of the size of your story, you're going to hear from someone today who's been exactly where you are and found their way through. Now, before we dive into the first clip, I want to let you know that my Notes to Novel course is officially open for enrollment, but only until August 28th. This is my signature 8-week program designed to take you from scattered ideas to a completed first draft, all using the exact framework you're about to hear these writers talk about. So whether you're stuck somewhere in the middle of a draft or just unsure how to get started, Notes to Novel gives you the step-by-step roadmap to finally finish your book. You'll get my proven framework, genre-specific guidance, and all the tools you need to write with confidence. Enrollment closes August 28th, and we won't open doors again until next year. So if you're ready to make real progress, head over to savannahgilbo.com/yes to learn more and to enroll. All right, now let's dive into our very first clip from Jennifer Landers.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Landers, and I have dreamed of being an author for most of my life. I began writing when I was around 10 years old, and I have longed to create stories like the ones I have read and loved over the years. I'm a fantasy romance writer who has struggled with finishing a first draft. I am notorious for getting 15 to 20,000 words into a manuscript, getting overwhelmed, and leaving it. I believe part of this is due to being a pantser and not truly understanding how to outline or structure a novel. I received Savannah's newsletter, so when I learned that the Notes to Novel course was opening, my interest was piqued, but I wasn't sure if it was right for me. I reached out to a couple alumni of the course on social media, asking them for their feedback. I received the same answer from all of them. Take the course. You won't regret it. It will help you like it helped me. So, you can guess what happened next. I signed up. Taking Savannah's Notes to Novel course was a game changer. I was determined to finish my current project that I had played with for about 3 years. The thought of outlining intimidated me because I was never sure of the right way to do it, and I doubted that I could plan a whole novel up front. I thought it had to be perfect and regimented. I had 2 big takeaways from the course that changed everything for me: the genre cheat sheets and how to outline. Knowing what key scenes to include in my novel based on that genre was invaluable. Feeling stuck or unsure? Just refer to your genre cheat sheet. It laid out vital information that you need to know and include in your story. Learning how to outline in a way that was simple and effective took away the intimidation piece of it for me. I learned that it didn't have to be perfect and that it could live with me throughout the drafting process. I understood how to incorporate key scenes and how to build it from there. I began to view an outline as a map. It was there to help guide my path while drafting my novel. I was able to create my map that still allowed me the space to discovery write. This led me to outlining for the first time. I don't think I would have ever done it without Savannah and Notes to Novel. This course offers concise teaching that allows you to have structure and a plan to result in effective writing. The live Q&A calls with Savannah provided guidance and feedback in real time, making me realize how important coaching was to a writer. The community aspect offered support and encouragement from your peers, and it was a wonderful atmosphere to learn from while each person was at a different phase of their writing journey. I enjoyed it so much that I was sad when it ended. I highly recommend this course to writers, no matter what stage you are at. Since taking the course, I put into practice the concepts and exercises which have allowed me to outline my novel and finish my first draft. I feel confident this has set me up for future success as a writer. Thank you for everything, Savannah. I truly appreciate having you in my corner.
I love what Jennifer said about viewing her outline as more of a map that guides her while still allowing her to discover her story as she writes. I think that is such an important point, and I want to make sure everyone catches that. Because a lot of writers think that outlining means boxing themselves into some kind of rigid structure where there's no room for creativity or discovery. But what Jennifer discovered, and what I see with so many of my students, is that having an outline actually gives you more creative freedom, not less. It's kind of like the difference between wandering around lost in the woods versus hiking a trail with a map. When you know where you're going, you can actually enjoy the journey and take creative detours without that fear of getting completely lost. So thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your story with us. I'm so excited to hear that you finished your draft after 3 years of struggling with the same project. That makes me so happy, and I know sometimes we just need the right tools to unlock what's already inside of us. So for anyone who's listening who's been working on the same story for years without making real progress, I hope you take heart from Jennifer's experience, because it's never too late to find the right approach to your story. All right, now let's move on to our next clip from Nefer. Here's what Nefer had to say.
Hi, Savannah. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on Fiction Writing Made Easy. I'm Nefer. I live in the Bay Area, and I write dark and cozy fantasy. Before I took Notes to Novel, I'd spent 5 years working on my first fantasy story, and I was caught in this endless loop of line editing, rather than doing what was important at that time, focusing on big developmental edits. I'd read plenty of craft books, and I'd listened to a few podcasts, but I still felt like something wasn't quite clicking for me, and this led to kind of a continuous cycle of fear and doubt, which just gave me this compulsion for more line editing. And I knew it at the time, but I couldn't break out of it, so that was frustrating to say the least. In Notes to Novel, my biggest breakthrough or aha moment is kind of hard to pinpoint because I had several. So one was regarding genre, and we talk about genre a lot, so some people think of genre as like YA fantasy or adult fantasy, but when we think about genre, we're thinking more about, is this an action or a mystery? So for me, it was lining up external and internal genres to build strong bones or the framework up for my story, focusing on action and worldview genres. Another big aha moment was learning more about the key scene elements, specifically the crisis point, and how you want each crisis to hold equal weight so the decision feels real and not easy. The character has autonomy, and this also sets up the stakes for conflict in a way that feels really natural. So now that I've completed Notes to Novel, I want to touch on what's changed for me. I've always loved writing, but now I have a lot more confidence in what I'm doing, I think because I have more clarity. So I feel a lot more confident setting up a scene, to strengthening my characters' arcs, to showing a lot more character interiority. And I'm definitely not stuck in line editing anymore, so I highly appreciate that. As for revising the fantasy book that I'm working on, I actually went through it and outlined it according to the method that we learned in Notes to Novel, and it's been so much easier to just dig in and make big necessary changes. I also appreciate outlining a lot more. The Notes to Novel method encourages my brain to think in a linear cause and effect way that's been helpful in setting up a cleaner draft and a stronger version of my original story. So I just want to say that I'm really happy that I took Notes to Novel, and I'm endlessly grateful to you, Savannah, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, how many of us can relate to that 5-year line editing loop that Nefer was stuck in? I think that in particular is going to resonate with so many of you listening because it's such a common trap for writers. And what really stands out to me is how Nefer identified the real problem. She was polishing words that might not even stay in her final draft because the foundation of her story wasn't solid yet. That's kind of like spending hours painting a room when you haven't even built all the walls, right? This is why I always say structure first, prose second. So thank you for sharing that, Nefer. I also love how she said that she took away this new way of thinking from notes to novel, and that is this kind of linear cause and effect way of thinking. Because this is exactly what's going to help you break that revision loop, when you can understand how each scene connects to the next scene and serves your larger story, then you can finally move forward instead of endlessly tweaking the same chapters. So for anyone listening who finds themselves constantly going back to fix earlier chapters instead of moving forward, I hope Nefer's breakthrough is your permission slip to keep writing. And like Nefer, I hope you trust that you can make your story beautiful later if you first make it complete. So thank you again, Nefer, for sharing that with us. All right, now the next clip I have comes from Tiara Ito, so let's see what she had to say about her experience in the Notes to Novel course.
Hi, I'm Tiara Ito, a writer from Burbank, California, and I like to write action, magical realism, and family-based stories. Before I joined Notes to Novel, I mainly wrote short stories, so I was comfortable writing in that format, but when I tried to write a novel, it felt completely overwhelming, and I had no idea where to start. For me, I really struggled with the length of planning and structuring a novel, and since there was a lot more ground that I needed to cover in 80,000 words versus the 2,000 words that I was used to, I struggled a lot with how to plan and structure my story so that I could get started. And the biggest breakthrough for me in the course happened on 2 levels. The first was on the mindset of writing a novel and getting more comfortable with the idea of iterating, and the second was in the planning and structuring of it. Since this was a new format for me, I found it incredibly helpful to have a clear framework to use that was also broken down into easy-to-follow steps. So with those 2 things combined, it helped me overcome my biggest obstacle, which was perfectionism, because it allowed me to focus on just moving through the framework while reminding myself that I just needed to get something down onto the page and then I could always come back later and refine it. Now that the course is done, I feel a lot more comfortable writing and trusting myself with the process. I also notice I'm more confident with my storytelling choices, and I definitely don't overthink as much as I did before. Although it still comes up every now and then, but the best part is I don't feel completely lost when I'm sitting down to work on my story. I feel like I'm actually enjoying the process of writing more than I did before, which is a great feeling to have, especially as I'm working on my first novel. So this course has definitely changed the way I think about writing and how I approach the process, and now I'm excited to finish my first draft and get started on the next one. Overall, it was a great experience, and I love that I got to do this course with other writers going through a similar struggle as me. So the sense of community that was built from the course was great, and there are even a few of us who still meet up to check in and make sure we're still making progress on our projects. So I'm glad that I took that first step and signed up for the course because I'd probably still be thinking about writing a novel instead of actually working on one right now. So I'm just really grateful that I had the opportunity to do this and to learn so much from it.
I'm so glad that Tiara highlighted both the mindset shift about iteration and the practical framework because you really do need both to be a successful writer. And what struck me the most was when Tiara said she's now enjoying the writing process more than before, because this is huge, right? So many writers think that struggling and suffering is just part of being a writer, but it does not have to be that way. When you have a clear framework and you've given yourself permission to iterate, then writing can actually be joyful. I also appreciate that Tiara mentioned the community aspect and how some of the students from that group still meet up to check in on each other. It's no secret that writing can be such a solitary journey, but it doesn't have to be so lonely. And having other writers who understand your struggles and celebrate your wins can really make all the difference. So for anyone who's listening, who's maybe only ever written short stories or who might be intimidated by the length of a novel, Tiara's story shows you that it's really about breaking that big project down into manageable pieces. Because doesn't it feel a lot harder to write a novel than to write one scene at a time until you have a novel? Sometimes the key is tricking our brain by just talking about what we're doing a little differently. So Tiara, thank you so much for sharing that. I love hearing about your experience, and I know that's going to resonate with so many people listening. All right, now next up, we're going to hear a clip from Jennifer Wagner, so let's go ahead and dive right into that.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wagner, and I write YA fantasy. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I had this fantasy story with a strong female lead that I'd been dreaming about for years, but for some reason, I could never write more than the first chapter or two without getting stuck. Every time I sat down to write, I'd think about all the plot threads, all the world building, all the character arcs I needed to juggle, and I'd freeze up. Then I'd go back and polish that first chapter again because I didn't really know what else to do. I didn't have an MFA. I'd never taken a creative writing class, so I also had the whole self-doubt thing going on too. I found the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast, and I had heard about the Notes to Novel course, but I wasn't sure it would work for me because I am more of a discovery writer. But I'm so glad I signed up because the course taught me how to break things down into smaller pieces instead of focusing on everything all at once. The scene-by-scene roadmap especially was a game changer for me because, for the first time, I wasn't staring at this mountain of a story. I was looking at one scene at a time, and that felt doable. I felt like I finally had a strategy for tackling this thing that felt really big and unwieldy. Once I had my outline done, and once I could see the path from beginning to end, I remember telling my husband, I actually think I can finish this thing now. And so, within 4 weeks, I had a complete outline, not just vague ideas, but a real roadmap all the way to the end. I started writing and I didn't stop until I was done, and in about 90 days, I had a complete first draft. Was it perfect? God, no. I changed my villain's name 3 times. I had some timeline issues, and don't even get me started on all the tiny details I still need to figure out. But it was done. And that was literally the best feeling. So, if you're stuck like I was, rewriting the same chapters over and over, feeling like you might not be cut out to be a writer, I hear you just need a clear plan and someone to show you the way. And that's what this course gave me. And it's why I finally have a complete novel instead of just a perfectly polished first chapter. So yeah, thanks for that, Savannah, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
I love that she mentioned her villain's name changed and the timeline issues because that is the point of first drafts, right? It's to uncover all of those things, not to write something that's perfect. So for everyone listening who can relate to Jennifer's story, if maybe you don't have an MFA or any kind of formal writing training, and if you wonder if you're quote unquote qualified to write a novel, then hopefully Jennifer's story has inspired you because you don't need those kind of credentials. What you do need is a plan, a process, and the courage to write messy. All right, so thank you, Jennifer, so much for sharing your story with us. Let's move on to our final clip, and this one is from Sheila Holmes.
Hello, I'm Sheila Holmes, and I'm from Toronto, Canada. By day, I'm a doctor and a teacher, and by early morning, I'm a writer. I'm currently working on a dystopian society/worldview novel and a medical thriller series. My stories explore the intersection of medicine, ethics, and feminism. I wanted to share my writing journey over the past year through the lens of the 5 commandments of storytelling. Because what better way to tell a writer's story than as a story? Notes to Novel led to the turning point that changed everything. A couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to write novels. I had a few ideas percolating, and being a nerd by nature, I dove all in to learn about storycraft. I read several books, including Save the Cat, Story Grid, Writing Down the Bones, on writing. I got a masterclass subscription. I took a college course. I watched YouTube videos and listened to several podcasts, including my favorite one, Savannah's. It was fascinating to see how stories are constructed, but also overwhelming. I had so much information, yet no idea how to actually put things together. I kept rewriting the same scenes and getting stuck. My true inciting incident came last fall when I made a promise to myself. If I didn't finish the draft by the time Notes to Novel enrollment opened again, then I had to sign up. Part of me wondered if the course would be a more organized version of what I had heard on the podcast or what I had already learned in books, but I knew I couldn't keep spinning my wheels. I needed more than information. I needed a framework and support. Investing my time, money, and energy meant treating a personal passion and myself as a priority, even with many competing demands. The months leading up to the course were tough. Life threw a slew of challenges my way, and writing time was scarce. Even when I carved it out, I bounced between over-planning, procrastinating, or under-planning and getting lost. I knew I was a good student. I had done a million years of school, but could I actually be a good writer? Everything changed during Notes to Novel when I learned how to use genre to plan out the key scenes of my story and of my subplots. I already knew what was expected of the different genres, but I didn't know how to integrate those elements into my own story. I learned how to merge what was expected for both the external and the internal genres into the key scenes of the story, and how to use genre to play out my subplots. I discovered what my midpoint scene needed from both the society and the worldview perspective, and how to map out my romance and performance subplots within the larger story. This revelation gave me the scaffolding to build a story that actually worked. After Notes to Novel, armed with my refined story plan, I came to a decision point. Do I start drafting now, or should I outline every scene in detail first? Both paths had failed me before. Do I risk drafting into a dead end, or getting bogged down in the planning and never actually writing my story? I chose to draft, but this time there was a difference. I had the solid frame to build on, the key scenes, the genre, and the character arc. Instead of needing a finished house before writing, I could trust scaffolding, building floor by floor and room by room. This gave me the direction and the flexibility to move forward. I outlined my entire 4-book medical thriller series and my dystopian standalone story. Now I'm drafting the dystopian book and it's coming along great. It's The Little Mermaid meets Handmaid's Tale, a feminist speculative story set in a future oceanic society. For me, a planther, knowing the key scenes and arc is enough structure to begin, while still leaving space for discovery. Thanks to Savannah and Notes to Novel, I feel like I can write the stories that I've always wanted to tell. And just like in fiction, my decisions reveal who I am and how I'm growing. Choosing to write, but now armed with a solid plan, helps me to see myself differently, not just as a good student of writing craft, but actually as a writer.
I saved Sheila's clip for last because she told her story through the 5 commandments of storytelling, which I think is so amazing. So thank you, Sheila, for sharing your experience. And what really resonated with me about Sheila's story is the turning point moment about genre. So she said she knew what was expected of different genres, but she wasn't sure how to integrate those elements into her own story. And this is such a common struggle because it's one thing to understand that a thriller needs a victim at the beginning, but it's completely different to figure out how to weave those expectations into your unique story with your unique characters and your unique themes. I also love how Sheila said that she felt like she had scaffolding to build a story that actually worked. And this is exactly what your genre framework can give you. You don't need every single detail figured out before you start writing, but you do need those load-bearing walls in place. So the key scenes, the conventions, how your character and your plot work together, and things like that. That's your scaffolding. Everything else can then be discovered and refined as you write. And I have to say, the way that Sheila described her story as Little Mermaid meets Handmaid's Tale, Sheila knows this, but I'm already obsessed with her book. And for anyone who's listening who's trying to blend genres or tackle big themes like medicine, ethics, and feminism, Sheila's approach really shows that having a solid genre framework doesn't limit your creativity. It actually gives you the structure to explore complex ideas with confidence. So thank you so much for sharing that, Sheila. And for anyone who's listening, if you resonated with any of the stories shared in today's episode, and if you want to get in touch with these writers, we will put links to where you can find everyone in the show notes. And if something did resonate with you, I'm sure that all the writers who shared clips today would just love it if you reached out and left them a little comment on social media or something. So again, we will post all their links in the show notes. And last but not least, just one more reminder that Notes to Novel is currently open for enrollment right now through August 28th. And this is your chance to join writers just like the ones you heard from today. To learn more about the program and grab your spot before enrollment closes, go to savannahgilbo.com/yes. And remember, we only open enrollment a few times a year, so if you're ready to finally finish your novel, don't wait. Head over to savannahgilbo.com/yes to learn more about Notes to Novel and to enroll. All right, so that's it for this episode of the Fiction Writing Made Easy podcast. Head over to savannahgilbo.com/podcast for the complete show notes, including the resources I mentioned today, as well as bonus materials to help you implement what you've learned. And if you're ready to get more personalized guidance for your specific writing stage, whether you're just starting out, stuck somewhere in the middle of a draft, drowning in revisions, or getting ready to publish, take my free 30-second quiz at savannahgilbo.com/quiz. You'll get a customized podcast playlist that'll meet you right where you're at and help you get to your next big milestone. Last but not least, make sure to follow this podcast in your podcast player of choice, because I'll be back next week with another episode full of actionable tips, tools, and strategies to help you become a better writer. Until then, happy writing.